Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine, and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs, and the all-around tech guru. What's up, Greg?
I don't know about but
yeah, we're trying that out. This is the first episode where we're adding the, but I kind of like it. I like the ring to it, man.
I'll take it. I mean, when I think of the tech guru, of course I think of Jeff Smith, right? So,
well, Jeff's not here right now, so you're the tech guru.
All right. I'll get an email from him in about 15 minutes, and
that's the perfect segue to get him back on the show because we need him back again.
Yes.
But yeah, man. So we got a special guest today, as always. But this guest is an in-house guest, which means that we know him personally. So it's always a little bit more relaxed, right? But honestly, this dude, he's a dynamo, man. I don't know about you, but like whenever I get around him and I start talking about story ideas, working with clients in new and interesting ways, building cars, and generally just working, man, I feel energized. There aren't too many people who can make me feel lazy, but he's one of them. He's
especially when you get a text message at 11:30 p.m. going, "Hey, were you serious about wanting a Barra engine?"
Yeah.
Whoa, what, dude? You're 2 time zones away. Like,
yeah, exactly.
It's like 1:30 in the morning for you. Well, I guess it was the right time in Australia, which is who he was talking to because he's still working.
No, but you know what, man? That's the kind of energy he brings, and I'm appreciative of it. He's he's just always grinding, bro. And you know, of course, I'm talking about our young go-getter himself, Ivan Korda, one of our salesman superstars here at Automedia. Let's go ahead and bring him on. What's up, Ivan?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for making some time to do this. I know you're busy, but sometimes you just gotta talk shop.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to do it with you guys. And thanks for the kind words, Vinny. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely, man. And I'm not just blowing smoke. That's true. Every time we get together, I feel like invigorated to want to pump out great editorial for our readers, work with our partners. And that's actually what today's about, right? Like, so we asked you to come on and talk about a project that you are currently in the throes of. And geez, man, I got to admit, I've been like crazy jealous watching the progress that you're making and how fast you're making it on this project. I don't want to jump right into that one just yet, though. We're going to talk about that one, but I want to introduce you a little bit to our audience, right? So as I mentioned, you work in our sales department, but you are a lifelong automobile enthusiast. You've had a bunch of projects, and I want to talk about those first.
Yeah, definitely lifelong, man. I don't think there's a time that I can remember where cars were not important to me. And when I say important, I mean just about all I think about outside of my friends and family. But yeah, I mean, from day one, the only toys I cared about were cars, man. They all had, well, I guess they had to have wheels. So yeah. But really what got it started for me, anything that was cool was the first Mustang that I had bought. Probably, I think I was 19 years old, going to the University of South Florida, and I'd saved up and I'd driven these cars that I'd call beaters. They were fine, like condo boxes and stuff. But finally, I'm like, I can get something with some power, which I thought was power back then. So yeah, I bought a 2002 Mustang GT, which really just opened up a whole new can of worms for me, because obviously probably the most modified vehicle on the planet, a Mustang.
Dude. That's something that you and I have in common. I've always been around classic cars, but that was like the first late model at the time car that I had and was modifying. And you could say, it was like a late model muscle car, was a New Edge Mustang.
Yep.
So yours was a 02, but don't be modest, dude. You hooked that thing up. I believe you had a couple different forced induction setups on that thing. One of them being a turbo, right? Which was pretty common on those 2 valves.
Yeah. So that car taught me a lot, man. They were really easy to work on. That was before the whole YouTube trend. So forums were really big, and that platform had a really big forum following. So, I mean, I kind of built what I couldn't afford because I was a broke college student. So over time, I was buying used parts and rebuilding them, refinishing them and putting them on. But that car started out completely stock, had like, I think 65,000 miles. And I ended up doing the basic upgrades, like putting lowering springs and shocks and stuff. But I pulled a lot of parts off the Cobra, like 0304 Cobra too. So like I swapped in an IRS out of an 03 Cobra because I like road racing and autocross and stuff, which really made that kind of car a lot of fun. And then, yeah, the power addiction was always there, but I started playing with nitrous pretty early. So I had like 125 shot on the thing for a while, and really that kind of got boring quick. So I had a Vortec kit on it, which was a lot of fun. Like a lot of fun. I think the car made like 420 wheel, and I was 19 years old. So like, in 09, that to me was awesome. Like in college, it made a bunch of great noises and stuff. So I decided to change things up though a little while later, and I did put a turbo kit in the car. That was the last iteration of that build. I put like an On3 turbo kit on it in my driveway in Florida summer. I remember it was brutal, but man, it was a lot of fun.
Safe to say, it was running a lot quicker than the original 14-second quarter mile time that those cars were like touting as, oh, it's so fast.
Yeah, no, definitely not. It was not fast in stock form. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but it was definitely not fast. It sounded fantastic though. Those two valves have a distinct sound.
They're very cool, man. And I think we're going to start seeing those as like the next popular tuner platform in the later muscle car era. But anyways, enough about that one. Very cool car. Hopefully we can throw up a photo of it. I believe it was a really cool red color, right?
Yeah. It was
torch red.
Torch red. Yep. It was torch red. Really cool color. I did enjoy it.
Okay. So then you get your big boy Mustang a little bit later down the road, right? Or was there something in between?
There was something in between.
Oh, okay. Was it another? I'm guessing it was another Mustang.
Yeah, I bought a. That was when I moved to Tennessee, so I sold that car. I actually sold that car to buy my wife an engagement ring.
Look at you, dude.
Yeah, and she still says she has that car on her finger, which is true. But I ended up buying a little while later. I ended up buying a 2012 Mustang GT.
Oh,
it
cool.
was like the car at the time that I was dreaming of. It was a Brembo car, which it had different shocks and it had different brakes on it and things like that. It was a really cool package. But I ended up getting kind of bored with that because I really couldn't afford to have a lot of fun with that platform. And then, yeah, I ended up buying what you're talking about.
What year was that one? Was it a 17 or an 18?
No, that was a 2012.
No, so the burgundy one that you had.
The burgundy one, that's the one I have now, and that's a 15.
Okay, it's a 15.
Yep.
Yeah, so that thing's nuts. Tell us a little bit about what you've done to that one, because it's gone through some changes, and it's wearing a big old blower on top.
Yeah, so that car, Greg's actually been through the majority of that car with me because we built a ton of editorial on enginelabs.com. So about 2 years ago, right when I started with Power Automedia, actually this is going on 3 years, I ended up having some kind of failure. I think a head gasket failure because the car was supercharged when I had it. It had a Roush TVS blower on it. It made a little over 700 wheel, and it was running like 980s at 140 miles an hour. It was a really fun car, and you could drive it anywhere. But I don't know what happened. For some reason, I heard the head gasket, which isn't super common at that power level. So we ended up tearing it apart, and we ended up finding some other issues. So that's when I called Greg, and I said, Greg, let's do some Coyote content. Like, there's not nearly enough Coyote content on EngineLabs.com. And
I like how you say we found a couple issues. We reused 2 parts.
Oh, good Lord.
There were 2 parts that we reused in the entire engine, and the block was not one of them.
You got to break some eggs, man.
I'm just saying.
We tried to repair it, and on the initial repair, with the machine shop that we used, they really screwed the pooch, and they left some metal in the cylinder heads and stuff, and it really, like, it made it a nightmare. I mean, it destroyed cam journals. It put metal through the entire block. It starved a lot of the engine of oil. And I'm talking about, this is just me on the first initial fire up, so it happened very quickly.
Good Lord.
But to be fair, it really spiraled what I think is a pretty kick-ass build series. So that's
it was absolutely worth it. It was a blessing in disguise.
Yeah,
it really was.
Greg's right. We didn't use much.
Yeah,
Crank was on. Like, we just decided to. I mean, the block was the only thing we used, and yeah, the block was the only thing we used.
Well, yeah, it makes sense because you're not gonna shoot for the same power number. You're not gonna say, yeah, let's rebuild it and not make it better. So what'd you guys do?
Well, the funny thing is like with the Coyote platform, you don't really ever change the crank because it's forged from the factory. Cylinder heads are fantastic, especially the Gen 2 heads, which is what I had, so it's 15 and up. We changed them because it hurt the cam bearings, and you really can't fix that for what we were trying to do. If it was a factory replacement deal, you could do it. But so we ended up contacting our friends at Livernois, and we said, hey, Dan, Dan Millen's the owner of Livernois, and we said we want to build 1,000 horsepower wheel horsepower street car, and this was 3 years ago. They were still not as common. And we wanted to build 1,000 horsepower street car with a blower that you could drive anywhere. And I mean, this thing weighs 4,000 pounds, so it's a big girl. But we ended up sleeving the factory block with Darton sleeves. We ended up putting Manley I-beam rods in it. Of course, ARP, like literally everything. It's got custom Ross pistons in it with the Livernois coating on them. We ended up doing ARP head studs. They actually did a port job on the cylinder heads, like their race port. Stock cams, we kept the VCT because that was the one thing that Greg and I had talked about. We really wanted to keep VCT just to make it a little bit more fun on the street. Not that you really need it with this damn Whipple because it makes so much torque. But we did it, So they built us this kick-ass motor, and we ended up selling the TVS at the time that was on the car, and I ended up going with Whipple's 2.9 liter Gen 3 blower, which was like the new hotness at the time. I had actually gotten like one of the first units, and yeah, we had put it on pump gas and then E85. I think the car made like on 20 pounds, it made 875 at the tire, with like a fairly reasonable tune-up from Lund Racing. And then we kind of got a little bit bored with it, and Dustin from Whipple called me and he said, look, I got this, I'm working on something awesome, man. Because I have a pretty good relationship with Dustin and the guys at Whipple, and he's like, I got a really kick-ass new project I'm working on. It's this Gen 5 blower, and he's like, it's going to make X more power than the Gen 3 that you have now. Do you guys want to do some editorial on it? I was like, yeah, of course. So
yeah, the guys over at Whipple are just cranking out new stuff all the time, and it's like every time they come out with something new, you're like, dude, how did they fit more in the same package? Matter of fact, they're now partners with Street Muscle, so thanks very much in part to you, Ivan. But yeah, man, I'm excited to get some content going for those guys, so that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's to be fair, there's some really great blower technology today. Like, a lot of these companies have really made some pretty big advances and investments in the technology that really makes these things as efficient as they are today. So yeah, I mean, Whipple is just doing a hell of a job. I mean, ProCharger, Vortec, there's quite a few companies, but I don't know why. Just from day one, I've kind of stuck with that one brand because they've treated me pretty well.
Yeah, and they worked.
Yeah, and they work, absolutely. And I mean, their quality is fantastic. The guys over there are great too. So
you put the new blower on. What kind of power are you making, dude?
So we put the new blower on, and like Greg and I wanted to do something a little bit different. We wanted to do a comparison based at two different boost levels, and boost really isn't a great point of comparison because boost is relative. Because it's really a restriction measurement. So what we did is we decided, all right, so we'll run the blowers at the same blower speed, meaning the same pulley size on both blowers. So basically, just for layman's terms, we ran the blower at 16 pounds and did a comparison, and then we ran the blower at 20 pounds, did a comparison on both setups. So I think on 16 pounds, the blower picked up like 70 wheel, and then on 20 pounds, the blower picked up like 100 and hell, I don't even remember, Greg. It was like 150 wheel horsepower. No, 175 wheel horsepower, almost 200 wheel horsepower.
Good
At the
Lord.
same
Well, and technically, didn't it have like half a pound of less boost for some reason?
I think it made half a pound of less boost, and the car, it made 1,026 wheel horsepower. It actually,
Holy
yes,
hellfire.
200 wheel horsepower. And the kicker is that the air intake temps was like 30 degrees cooler. And in the run, we obviously data log with Lund Racing. We data log every pull. In the run, the IATs would start at, whatever, I think it was 105. And the IATs would actually drop throughout the run, which is super, super uncommon. But they've definitely killed it with this new intercooler design. So,
dude, that's awesome. How'd you get the thing to hook? And were you driving?
I actually haven't taken the car to the track since this new blower, because I feel like we've done a good job like preparing for it, but it's gonna hurt something at that power level.
Yeah, you have it detuned a little bit right now, right? Just for street driving?
Yeah, I mean, for the last probably 8 months, I've had it on 93 pump gas and about 10 pounds of boost. The car probably makes somewhere in the mid 700s on this setup, and it's an absolute blast to drive. You can stab it anywhere as long as you're not in first gear, and the car it hooks up really, really well.
That's awesome, dude.
Yep.
So, Ivan, the people want to know about your latest project, right? But before we get into that, I'm curious, why Fords, man? You're like Greg. I get the Mustang love, right? But your newest project is also a Ford, and it's a major departure from the Mustang camp. So why Fords?
That's a good question, Vinny. I'll take you back a little bit, just real quick. So, as a kid growing up, I lived in Florida, and I had an uncle that had a tuning and performance shop in West Palm Beach. And I would go down there on summers for about 2-3 weeks. And, his focus was GM. He was like in the era of when LS engines were new and popular, and he was really killing it. And he had some really nice C6 Z06s around the shop at that time. And man, like I had this little shitbox like Honda Civic I was driving, which I loved at the time. But he's like, this was, I think, 2006. And there's a C6 Z06. He's like, let me take you for a ride in a bone stock V8 American muscle equipped vehicle, and let me change your life. I'm like, whatever, man. Like, that's fine. There's Hondas making 500 horsepower. It is what it is. Takes me for a ride. As soon as I felt the torque, I'm like, this thing's for sale. I gotta get something with 8 cylinders, man. So, that's honest to God truth. So him and I started like shooting the shit and like, hey, what can I afford as an 18, 19-year-old kid, like, that I can have a little bit of fun with, I'm going to school full time, working as much as I can, but that's like it's tough. So I at the time those cars were 7, 8 years old, 6, 7, 8 years old, and they were readily affordable. Like you could buy one for under $10,000 with very low miles. So that's what I did. And that's literally how I bought my first Ford, how I started down this Mustang and Ford trend. It had nothing to do with any family, influence or anything like that. Because hell, it was a Brighton Corvette that kind of steered me that way. But ever since, I've just really grown to like the lines and just what Ford does with the vehicles. So not to say Gen-3 Camaro, C3 Corvettes that have done right. There's tons of Chevrolets. There's a couple Dodges. A little different about that. But yeah, I'm a lover of all makes, man. Like I really don't care as long as it goes fast. Like I want to buy a Gen 5 Viper one day. Hope to be able to do it. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Hey, man, I'm the same way. I like them all, but everybody has that one brand that they kind of gravitate toward, even if you do like them all. But I appreciate your love for Mustangs and your new love, man. This F100 Project F Word. Tell us about it, dude. Number one, let's start with the very beginning. How'd you get the truck, and how'd you decide that you wanted an F100 to begin with?
So I'd always really, for some reason, like I have a little bit of acreage here, and I have this older truck that I call the farm truck that I've had about 5 or 6 years, and I really enjoy it, right? And then I blame this on David Cass and Ed Zinke. I swear to God. SEMA, 2018, I think 2 years ago, I'm walking through and I pass the Ford booth. I hit QA1 and I see this beautiful white chassis with all this really nice suspension. I'm like, what the hell is this? And at the time, I've been looking at the older truck market and kind of paying attention to how it's growing and stuff. And the Ford stuff is pretty appealing to me because it wasn't sky high price wise. And sure enough, man, that was an F100 chassis with all their bolt-on suspension. And I got talking to Dave and I said, man, I got to have one of these. I got to do this. And a year later, the following SEMA, I was finally in a place done with Boosted Coyote, which is the 2015 Mustang. And I was, talking to the editorial team. I said, look, I think right now the truck market is super hot. I think we should do a project that revolves around the truck market. I'm willing to do the work myself, put myself and my time on the line. What do you guys think? And, Ford Muscle was all in, let's do it. So, yeah.
Definitely, man. Shout out Dave Cass and Ed Zinke, both previous guests of the RodCAST. I'm not sure on the episode number, but we'll throw the link in the description below. But yeah, man, you hit the nail on the head. The truck market has just been growing exponentially. The classic truck market over the past, I don't know, 10 years, starting with the C10 square body. I mean, 68 through 72 Chevy C10s have always been really popular, but then all of a sudden, these old, like you said, these old beater farm trucks became super popular, overnight. People all wanted square bodies. And once those started getting up there in price, and it's like, dude, you can't hardly find them. They're all really expensive. Then people started looking at other makes, Fords, Dodge, F100s, D100s, D150s. And the thing that I've noticed with the Fords and the Dodges, it's harder to find the short bed variants, but when you do, a lot of times they're really well taken care of. Was that the case for the one that you found, and what's that story?
So what I want to add to your point there, the aftermarket has a big influence on the popularity of a certain platform. And I think somehow a few companies like QA1, which is a big part of the decision, that was all right, well, I can't afford to buy a chassis, but I can afford to buy some suspension parts and build a truck like I would want it, So once those companies start to support a platform, it'll grow, because wheels, brakes, that stuff is easy. That's already in existence, and it's just, modifying an existing spindle or whatever. But yeah, I mean, my truck actually, really interesting. I put up an ad. I joined a bunch of F100 groups, and I put up an ad saying, hey, I'm looking for a short bed truck, 67 to 72, because I knew that's the year that the QA1 suspension would work on. And a guy reached out to me. He messaged me, and he was in Alabama, about 2.5 hours away. He said, hey, I have this really clean little truck. I'm going through some family trouble right now. I just don't have time to fool with it. It actually, what they call a yard run and drives. And, I want a grand for it. And I said, $1,000? What's this thing look like? So he sent me photos, and I called my buddy. I said, we got to go. We literally, 30 minutes later, we were on the road to Alabama to get this thing, because this would have been probably a $3,000 or $4,000 truck had anybody else been selling it. It was in really good shape. The only big damage the truck had was actually to the paint, and it didn't have quite a ton of patina on the hood and the front fenders, and the bed floor was rotten. But outside of that, the cab, everything was in great shape.
Dude, that's awesome. You really scored a deal, because now, even just in that short amount of time, the prices on those things have gone up. You said it, dude. It seems that as soon as a brand starts backing a certain platform, people want them, because it's oh, now I can add a really cool suspension set. I can put coilovers on this thing. I'm not limited by leaf springs in the rear. That's really cool.
Like those, and these trucks have I-beams, so it really, really limits. You can do those drop beams and stuff, but guys just really, they don't perform. It's still going to be an old sloppy truck, and I think that's what a lot of people try to get away from when they're building something like this,
Yeah. So you dragged the truck home, or did you drive it? You said it ran, sort of.
Yeah, no, we didn't drive it. I drove it up on the trailer, but we didn't drive it. I mean, when I got this thing, it actually wouldn't even fire up when I got there, but the guy had sent me some videos of it running. And first of all, Vinny, I'd never dealt with a carburetor before. It was my first carburetor vehicle. I'm dead serious. So this was like I'm looking at this thing. I'm like, man, what the hell is this contraption? So I'm looking, there's a bunch of fuel coming out of it. They had JB welded the accelerator pump, which what I've learned is now the accelerator pump. They JB welded it shut, but it's still like leaking oil out of there or fuel. So, I got it home or whatever, and I just I diagnosed it, wanted to figure out what I was going to do with it because I didn't plan on putting an engine in this thing right away.
What did it have? A 351 or what? Yeah, what was under the hood?
It was a 360 FE.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. That's right. What year was it?
I was this is a 69 year model truck.
69. Okay. Yeah,
yep.
That makes sense.
Yep. So I just, I did I did some YouTube and did a quick carburetor rebuild on this thing. And I mean, it ran like a sewing machine. It was perfect. Outside of the exhaust leaks, I mean, the thing ran awesome. So, at that point,
cool,
it was like, all right, let's start planning for the rest.
Yeah, perfect old farm truck. So, but you took kind of like an unconventional route as far as like the order of operations, if we will, right?
Yep.
So you started, and I don't want to steal your thunder here. I'll let you kind of tell the story, but basically you get the truck home. Did you give it the name Project F-Word before you started, or did you run into some like issues that made you give it that name?
Actually, the name comes from Scott Parker, our head of editorial.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I was bouncing ideas off Scott. I had no idea what to name this thing. I'm not really good with naming projects, and I just didn't really have any good ideas. And Scott's like, just call it Project F-Word. I think it makes sense, and I do agree. It does make sense, because of the F100 or the F words you're going to say in the garage while you're taking apart the rusty bolts and stuff. But yeah, that's really how it came about.
So what was the first piece that you decided to tackle? Because like I said, it was a little bit seemed like that's an interesting place to start.
Yeah, so I probably don't take the most conventional route, and it's just because I've had some really good companies that have worked with me in the past, and what I try to do is if they don't have a bunch of experience with the platform, I will try to give them the opportunity to develop parts, kits, whatever, with my vehicle, if it can work out. And I am driving home the 2.5 hours and called up my buddy Jeff Kaufman at Silver Sport Transmissions. I said, Jeff, guess what I got? I said, I bought it's a 69 F100. And he's like, you're kidding me. I said, do you have a Magnum kit? Because I wanted to put a T56 6-speed Magnum in this thing. I said, do you have a Magnum kit for these? He said, no, I don't. But he's like, I've been talking about building one. I said, well, I can drop this thing off to you. Just let me know when you want it and just send it back whenever you're done. So he says, done. I mean, literally, that's the conversation. So we ended up, I think like the first week in January, right after Christmas and the holidays passed, I drove the truck up there with my buddy Chris to Silver Sport Transmissions, which is about 4 or 5 hours away from us, and right outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. And we dropped the truck off. They sent it, or they did all the development. They built the cross members. They have a hydraulic throwout bearing, like a really nice setup that bolts to the firewall, the pedal design, all that stuff. I mean, they did a really beautiful job developing the kit. So they called me and they said, hey, it's ready. And, but they wanted the truck in its raw form because that's what they do. They build kits for completely stock vehicles that somebody can then, do whatever they want with.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I remember I watched the video that you did with Silver Sport, which was awesome, by the way. We'll drop the link to that video in the description below. But just so the truck was an original 3-speed truck, right?
It was actually an automatic. It was an automatic on the column. Yep.
Okay. But I remember something that you were stressing in the video when you were giving your driving impressions was the throw of the clutch pedal and be like the position, your position in relation to the pedals and the steering wheel. Yep. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why I chose to work with Silver Sport, because I know they don't just slap together some parts and say it's going to work on this vehicle for this application. Like they actually go through the process of making sure the kit is going to work ergonomically for the driver. So like they spent a lot of time with the Magnum. You have a couple different shifter positions, and obviously with the truck and the bench seat and stuff like that, you want that versatility. So they made sure that they put the clutch pedal engagement in the perfect spot, couple inches off the floor, basically like right in the middle of the travel of the clutch pedal, and it felt fantastic. And also, they hooked it up with one of their I can't remember the name, but it's one of their proprietary shifters that they do in house. I think it's an STX shifter. I think that's what they call it, but it is like 20% shorter throws than a traditional Tremec Magnum 6-speed shifter, because not many people make Magnum specific shifters. They do. It's super nice. And the throws, man, like you got to think like the truck, right? You have that massive shift arm or shift rod or whatever the heck we call it nowadays, the handle.
Yeah.
So it's like 2 feet long. So the shorter the throw down low, the shorter it is up top. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty kick-ass. I was pretty pumped about that.
Wait, so you can't use a T56 shifter in a Magnum?
No.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember specifically. I can't speak with facts, but there's something different about not just the transmission, because the transmission is completely different than a T56, but there's something different about the shifter box that you can't use a standard T56 shifter with it.
Interesting.
But there's a couple other shifters in the market that they have a seal that leaks. They're pretty junk, and Silver Sport has come up with a way to I don't remember what they use in there that actually seals and does not leak, which is obviously pretty important with a $3,000 shifter.
Very cool. Well, I mean, they certainly know what they're doing over there, and that's awesome that you were a part of their development department with your truck, because now I'm sure that they're going to be having those kits on the market, unless they do they already.
Yeah, no. Now that was one of the first stories that we had actually done through Ford Muscle. So that kit is live. You can buy the entire swap kit for these 67 to 72 trucks or the 73 and up trucks. They also have, you can buy separately the hydraulic throwout bearing kit. It is all good to go.
Dude,
so
that's dope. How cool is that to have the prototype version in your truck?
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoy the process. I mean, they made it seamless. They're awesome people to deal with. So
Ivan, before we get into the next pieces of editorial that you've done and some of the other partners that you've worked with on the project, I'd like to get some insight as to how you developed the theme of the build or the build plan in general, because I know that was the first call that you made, but while it was there getting worked on, I'm sure you started developing more ideas. How did that go?
Man, my wheels are always turning, but I just have a very specific style personally, and my eye goes to the same or similar style all the time. So I really like that low, big wheel, big brake, a lot of tire look, basically the Pro Touring concept. And I wanted to do it in a truck. There's a few guys that have done it very well. So, I mean, I just knew I wanted to do it. And I actually didn't. One of the key things is I didn't want to touch the patina on the truck. If anything, I was just going to source some new front fenders maybe. And that's one of the things that I had done. I actually got a newer set of color match fenders. So,
dude, you basically went and decided to build the exact opposite of your last project with Boosted Coyote, because that was not that Mustangs aren't great handling cars, but that one was 1,000 wheel horsepower street car. It's made to go in a straight line, right? And now you're building this classic, so the total opposite end of the spectrum. It's not late model, totally classic Pro Touring truck. What's it been like working on not only a classic vehicle as opposed to a late model vehicle, but also building something that's made to go around an autocross or a short course versus to go down the 1320?
Yeah. The Mustang definitely wasn't designed to go around twist, or based on what I had done to it. I'd front sway bar for a little bit extra room up front for some of the things, and it handles okay. Actually, it probably handles better than the truck. But, it does a really good job. But it's a totally different experience. First of all, it's a lot dirtier because there's a lot of rust. 60 years or 50 years of dirt, right? And
Yeah,
rust.
welcome to my world.
It definitely tests your patience, but it's a really neat experience because those trucks are so simple. And one of the things that I really like about classic vehicles now, and I probably couldn't say this 2-3 years ago, I really like that everything is really made out of metal. That's the one thing. Late model vehicles, like it's all plastic everywhere you look. Inside, outside, it's all plastic. So, I mean, the truck and the classic stuff is definitely much simpler. And especially like with companies like QA1, I mean, their instructions are so good. They're color coded. Like, they make it pretty easy as long as you have decent wrenching abilities. Like, you can do a pretty decent job.
Well, it's like Legos for adults, man.
Yep.
No, but really, I know that you have developed some new skills that you didn't previously have working on this project. So before we get into like some of the other partners that you've worked with on this project, what have you done on your own in your home garage? Because I know that you have a pretty sweet little setup now. And you've kind of been messing around with a welder and doing some other things that you hadn't previously done. What's that been like?
Yeah. So like welding has always been something that I wanted to do. I don't know what it is about the craft, but I'd seen my grandfather probably about 20 years ago do it as a child, and something about that blue light or whatever you're not supposed to look at just kind of drew me. And ever since then, I've when the time was right, I was going to buy a little welder and start playing. So when I bought this truck, I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity. It needs a little sheet metal work. I could box some sections of the frame or whatever. So yeah, I have acquired some pretty neat tools for this build, and yeah, one of them is like a nice little machine. It's a Miller 210 or 211 MIG, and it's awesome. Like, I've learned welding thin sheet metal for like some of the door patches that I've made, some of the rear cab corners like that I just made some panels for, and just metalworking in general. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome, man. That's that Miller Multimatic, right? Is that the
Yeah.
two? Okay.
It's a 211, yeah, Multimatic
Okay.
211.
Dude, that's awesome. And
Man, I think it's tiny. I think it's like 12 inches tall and like 24 inches wide. It honestly, like, it's super small. It's awesome. And it's powerful.
That one does all three, right? MIG, TIG, and flux core?
This one will do flux and MIG. The
Okay.
220 is that'll do MIG, TIG, and flux.
Oh, that's right. That's the big boy.
Yep.
That's cool, man. I know that you've also kind of like made some upgrades to your home garage. Your wife, I believe, if I remember from your Facebook post, she hooked you up with a 2-post lift, no?
Yeah. Yeah. So traditionally, I've done everything, like a lot of the other, passionate enthusiasts out there, right? They do it on jack stands and stuff. And man, it just wears on you over time. But for my 30th birthday, she ended up buying me a 2-post lift, which is, it is a godsend, man. Like,
It's a game changer.
It is a game changer. It is awesome. Like, even just for basic stuff, not having to get up and down, move the jack stands, whatever. Like, I've had it in the shop for maybe 3 weeks now. And it's awesome.
Yeah, man. After like the 100th time that a piece of rust or like dirt falls in your face and your eyes, it gets a little old working on your back. So that's really cool, man. Congratulations. But moving on, you mentioned QA1, right? Is that the next piece of editorial that you guys knocked out on Project F-Word?
Yeah. So after we did this Silver Sport transmission kit, the next phase actually was blowing the truck completely apart. So I wanted to start with a fresh foundation, and I had a local friend here that just recently got into powder coating, and he hit me up because I told him about this truck, and I said, hey, I'm going to take this thing down to the studs. I want to run you brake lines. I want to run you fuel line, everything. Like, I want to start fresh. Like, I'm not going to spend all this time and money and have this rusty frame. So I blew it apart, literally set the cab and the bed on one side of my shop on a cart that I'd built. And then we took this thing down, sandblasted it, and powder coated it. But once that was done, yeah, it was time to start assembling the QA1 parts. And their kit is awesome for these old trucks. Like, it's bolt on. They use factory holes in the frame to basically bolt in and position the cross members, and then you drill some other new holes that they give you some templates for. and it bolts in, man. I mean, it's engineered very well. It drops a bunch of weight because the old steel stuff is very, very heavy. So their stuff is all tubular and stuff with rod ends and some really nice high quality pieces. So yeah, I think it dropped like 150 pounds off the front end of the truck.
Yeah, it's safe to say that, you know, in '69 when that thing was first built, it was not intended to go around in autocross. Autocross, I don't even think was even a thing yet, but now it can handle, dude. But one thing that I thought was interesting about the QA1 kit, and they've implemented this on their C1500, so like those '90s Silverado kits that they have now too,
Yep.
was that they went away from like a quote unquote conventional like link system that a lot of other manufacturers utilize, and they decided to implement a torque arm system. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of these trucks that have a weld-in, which the majority of them are weld-in rear suspensions, they use like a 4-link setup, or sometimes like a 3-link with a panhard.
Right.
Uh, Honestly, I at the time I'd not thought to ask Dave about why they decided to do torque arm. I assume it wasn't anything to do with packaging because it still takes up the same amount of real estate. Um, so there has to be some kind of performance advantage that they had
There,
seen.
There is, yeah. I had a chance to speak to Dave about that at SEMA, not on the F100 kit, but the theory carries over from that C1500 kit that I was talking about. And basically, it's just their theory is that it helps with power transfer. You have this, it's added torsional rigidity, if we can kind of say that, right?
Yeah.
So that beam that runs down the center, that torque arm, it kind of loads up, right? And I might be butchering this. If we were talking to Dave, he could explain it much better than I could.
I'm not a
But
suspension expert.
but yeah, it helps with transferring that power to the rear wheels and putting it to the ground. But
Yeah.
but
So
yeah,
there's
so
because it's got the torque arm, but it's also got a panhard rod back there, so it's also helping center the axle and stuff. So
yeah,
it's
that's
well.
a really trick piece, man. It looks cool. The way that it bolts to the diff cover. But anyways, so you bolt that thing in. The front suspension, you had to do a little bit of cutting, a little bit of drilling, right? But it was once you had those holes drilled, it literally bolted right on.
Yeah, I mean, the toughest part of the install, and it's not really that tough, but the toughest part of the install really is just cutting out the factory cross member from the factory frame because it's super thick. It's welded in really well, and it's the one that hangs over the engine. So it's probably 12 inches wide, and it's thick. So I didn't have a plasma cutter. I'd done everything by myself on jack stands at the time, and I actually had to flip the frame upside down to get the underneath side. So like it was a lot of work, and probably I don't know, like 7 or 8 cutoff wheels later. But yeah, I mean, not a big deal at all. Once you get that sucker out of there, you grind out some of the spots, clean it up a little bit, and then just set your cross member into place and basically mark your holes and start drilling.
So now you no longer have leafs in the rear, and you don't have I-beams up front. You got coilovers all around, tubular control arms, all kinds of badass components from that QA1 kit. What's that going to allow you to do as far as your altitude adjustment?
Man, so that's what the ride height has got to be right, you know. So the kit is just there's just so much adjustability. Like the upper and lower control arms are fully adjustable. This kit also comes with a front rear sway bar that I opted for. Those are adjustable. It has adjustable rod ends. Then it is a full coilover shock with fully adjustable ride height. And then the one thing that we didn't mention, actually, they have rack and pinion on this thing, which is just awesome. You know,
Wait,
if you get
that's included in the kit?
Yeah,
Dude, that's
you
awesome.
79 and 93 Mustang rack and pinion. So yeah, I mean it's really going to transform the driving experience.
Dude, that's cool. I didn't realize that it came with rack and pinion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. If you look at some of the photos I have on my Instagram of the front shot, you'll see the rack and pinion in there. And then even like the rear kit, it's fully adjustable. Everything in the rear is adjustable. Ride height adjustable in the back too with coilover setup. And the front, I opted for a 2-inch drop spindle. So like total drop that I could achieve is 7 inches over stock. That's going to be limited by tire width and height. and then the rear it's 5 inches because they actually give you a nice C notch in the back of the frame
Nice
too.
5.7 drop, man. That's nice. Dude,
Yeah.
you are going to be whipping that thing. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you got the suspension all bolted on. You got the frame. Essentially, you have a roller at this point, and you're not going to do anything to the patina on the cab or the bed other than what you're going to do on the bed floor. So what came next?
Well, so I didn't touch any of the patina outside, but what I did do is like I went in and any speck of rust that I noticed on the rear cab corners, underneath, on the floor, I cut out, replaced, and then we had went in and sprayed the entire underfloor with Eastwood rust encapsulator, and then I clear coated it with actually like a really fancy, probably too fancy for this truck, clear coat. So that thing is protected. It's nice and clean, rust free. And then at that point, I basically, once I got the suspension bolted on, it was time to put the cab back on. And this was like probably a month ago that I finally got the cab back on the truck, which is pretty damn exciting. When, you know, getting to see it as at that point really a kind of a roller or a vehicle again, it's a good feeling.
Exactly. So was that around the time that we found out what was going to go between the frame rails and under the hood?
So I actually had found out a few months ago what was going to go on between the frame rails, but COVID totally shifted everything when it comes to sourcing parts and stuff. Especially with this engine that we chose, it was a brand new engine for this manufacturer. They were just starting to assemble these things, and then it's been shut. They were shut down for I think like 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So yeah, it was interesting, but I'd basically been on the waiting list waiting for this thing.
So when you got how happy were you when you opened that email and you saw that you were getting, correct me if I'm wrong, serial number 001?
Yeah. And it really didn't dawn on me until I got the engine and I kind of started to think about it. I'm like, I've not seen anybody post anything about this. Like, this has got to be like one of the first few. And sure enough, I emailed the guys at Ford Performance, and they were like, yeah, this is the first serial number 1 Gen-3 Aluminator engine that we have, pushed out of the plant, and you have the first one. So yeah, I mean, talk about an epic opportunity.
Dude, that's awesome. Like, when you told me and Greg and I were talking about it, I was like, dude, number 1, how cool is that? Like, because does it have like a placard or anything on the engine?
Yeah, it's got a plaque, and it's got the guy, because the guy that assembles it basically signs it once it goes through QC at the end. So the really neat thing about what Ford Performance does with their credit engine program, with these Illuminators engines especially, they basically send you a built engine from their factory, from Ford Performance, not Ford. So they go in and they find out what the weak points are for somebody that wants to use this in like a high-end performance applications, whether they want to add boost or they're looking to beat the snot out of it on a road course or something like that. So they put pistons and rods in this thing. So it's got Manley H-beam rods. It's got Molly pistons. It's got upgraded oil pump gears. Some really other trick fancy things that actually Greg and I had the pleasure of talking to the guys at the head engineer at Ford Performance about. And we had done a story just recently on enginelabs.com. But it even trickles down some of the really neat GT500, the new GT500 technology, like from the head studs and the head gaskets and things like that. So it's a pretty neat little engine.
Dude, how epic is that? I bet Greg was like a kid in a candy store as soon as he started writing that article.
Oh, it would have been even better if COVID hadn't ruined the fact that they invited Ivan and I out to actually be there when it was being assembled, and we couldn't do it.
Yeah, that was
the hardest email to ever write, to say, no, I can't do this right now.
I agree, Greg. Like that hurt my heart that I couldn't be there for that. I think that opportunity will come up again, but like to see your own engine assembled would have been pretty special. And the nice thing that Ford does is, so Ford Performance basically uses all the same QC control processes that they would put in a factory production engine. So like there's a guy that's walking the engine through the entire process, but everything is torqued by a machine. So like you get extreme precision and there's very little room for error. And they also, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they call it cold test the engine. So what that means is they will put this thing up to basically what is like a Spintron machine,
Yeah.
where it drives the flywheel, but it doesn't have any combustion. So it's got oil in it. It's got all the stuff that it needs to be lubricated, but it runs the engine dry, and then they check the compression ratio, or they check for compression to make sure it's within spec before they ship it out to the customer. So some really neat stuff going on over there.
Dude, that's crazy. I mean, you hear about that in like high-end luxury exotic cars like Ferraris, Lambos, you know, like the hand-built engines signed by the person that built them. So for Ford Performance to like give that level of QC to these engines that are these crate engines, that's pretty incredible, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, yep. And I mean, think about it. They know right away who the problem child is if fails or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're signing something and you're putting your seal of approval on it, like you're gonna work extra hard to make sure that it's perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely some pride in it.
So what is that? So that's a crate engine, but like, is that a carryover from any production vehicle? Like you mentioned the GT500, some parts, but
so this is the Gen-3 Coyote. So this is what you would find in a 2018 and up Mustang GT. It's a 5-liter Coyote, but that they just outfit with those parts that I mentioned. But yeah, this is basically a direct bolt-in for any 18 and up Mustang.
Dude, that's awesome.
So this thing comes with a long block, oil pan to intake. It's ready to go. And then we also, we worked with them to get the control pack, which controls the entire engine. It comes with the wiring harness, the computer. We got a starter, an alternator kit, and a bunch of other goodies that they make it really easy for the average guy to like swap this into whatever project they're working on. So
how cool is that, man? So so what kind of power is that thing making, and are you going to modify it?
So this thing in stock configuration, they actually don't rate it on the website, but talking to the engineering team and the sales team at Ford Performance, they rated at 460 horsepower, just like the Mustang engine, because they really haven't done anything to add additional performance. They've just added more durability to the engine. So,
gotcha.
But it is 12-1, just like the factory engine, and I'm just I'm trying to talk myself away from going down the boosted Coyote route again.
12-1 is kind of high for a boosted application.
No, man, it'll be good.
You should have heard him tell that to the Ford engineer when he's like, "No, man, it'll be fine." And the guy's like trying to be polite, and he's like, "All right," because he's got that OEM mindset where it's like he can't come out and be like,
"What do you mean?" He told us. He said, "This thing, 15 pounds of boost, no problem. Do it."
What do you guys think? Drop a comment in the comment section below. Does Ivan's new Aluminator need boost, or is 12-1 too high? Let the comments weigh in. But
I think it's time for a turbo system. I'm just saying.
Hey.
I built this truck to be, I'm going to say the word simple, but God knows it's definitely not simple when you look at the photos. But I wanted to build a setup that like I could really just beat the snot out of, and it would live forever. And not that adding boost to that would diminish any of that, but I'm much more confident in just having a simplified setup for a vehicle like this, especially because it is on an original chassis. So I'm not quite sure like where the limit of the chassis is. And I never want to be put in a situation to where like it's just the wrong driving experience. And I honestly, pulling weight out of this thing with obviously the engine from the factory was a big block Ford that's all iron. I mean, that thing had to have been 800-900 pounds. This Coyote's 400 pounds plus all the light
medium block.
Yeah, I mean, I think this truck is going to be right around 3,500 pounds with the suspension, the brakes, and the performance that I'm after. I think it's
Lord
on a drive with 460 horsepower, and we will probably have some tuning done by Lund Racing. It's going to have long tube headers. We may change the intake up and stuff with Ford Performance in the future, but 500 wheel in an application like this,
very attainable goal.
Blast, and I think it's like for where I live on these Tennessee back roads, I think it's going to be so much fun to drive, totally manageable at a very high rate of speed. That's what I'm after.
Oh yeah, dude. I mean, come on. You're talking about so you have the same power as a late model Mustang that in a package that weighs roughly 500 pounds less.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. And, you know, being a 6-speed, and we have a pretty special rear end that's in this thing. Like, I think the overall driving experience is what I'm after. Like, horsepower is awesome, and that Mustang is a lot of fun to drive. And it's a really weird feeling when the thing like just annihilates the rear tires at like 70 miles an hour on the highway. But there's something about traction that's also addicting.
For sure, man. Grip, especially when you talk about twisty roads and you know, autocross, short course, for sure. So you got the drivetrain dialed. You got the engine, the badass 6-speed transmission backing it. You got the suspension on the frame. You got that thing powder coated. You got the body set, or the cab set on the frame. You mentioned the rear end though. What's going on back there?
So again, this was one of those deals where one of the companies I really enjoy working with is Strange Engineering, and they built some really nice high-end stuff. I've seen them used in some of the other projects that we've done, and they've really executed well. So I called them. They were my first call because I wanted to do something. I knew that the 50-year-old 9-inch that was in the truck already, at the very least, needed axles, a new diff, maybe a new carrier, things like that, just to refresh it. And they were like, actually, we don't even make a housing for that thing. We'd love to build a housing. Can we work something out so we can actually build a bolt-in housing for the 67 to 72 truck guys, because we noticed the trucks are getting popular. So we ended up, you know, partnering with them to build a bolt-in, ready to go. You buy it, brand new housing for 67 and up truck. I think it's actually 65 to 72 is the axle year. But they sent us a brand new housing. They sent us a aluminum, I think they call it the Pro HD carrier. It's got their Strange S-Track. It's got ARP hardware all over this thing. It also has their Pro Touring floater kit, which, if you don't know what a floater kit is, it basically takes all the stress off the axle, and it just allows the axle to drive the tire. So it's basically the go-to for any kind of performance driving experience. So if you're autocrossing, road racing, or spirited driving in the street, a floater is what you're going to want. So we did that. I mean, this axle is kick-ass. But to boot, we also have a very special, or I have a very special place in my heart for the guys at Bear Brakes. And Rick and the team over there had hooked us up with some really kick-ass brakes, man, for this project. He was one of my first calls too, probably like right after Dave. I mean, I said, Rick, I just want to, there's nothing sexier than looking at like a nice performance wheel with like just a killer brake package under it, you know, like it just sets it off, right? And he's like, no problem. Whatever you want, whatever color combo, like we'll figure it out. So
I was gonna say, you picked the perfect color too.
And it took me months to just like decide on exactly what I wanted. But we hooked Bear and Strange up because Strange at the time was not actually building a rear brake kit to fit the floater for an application like we wanted. So they worked together and built me, because the front of the truck has 14-inch Bear rotors with their 6-piston caliper. Killer setup.
Was that the Errata speed?
It's an Errata speed rotor and hub, and then it's got their it's a 6-piston rotor, but or the 6-piston caliper. I don't remember. It's not the top of the line caliper.
It's the 6S.
It's the 6S, yeah. Woo, 6S. That thing's so bad, dude.
So bad. It is a beautiful, beautiful piece. And then we ended up having them powder coat it in that blue to kind of match the patina of the truck, because the truck is a blue, but brakes. I wanted all the new parts to have the new shine. I didn't want to pull away from the shine, but I think when you see it all together, I think you'll see my vision.
The coating blows my mind that they put on the calipers too, because it's almost like a translucent royal blue, like where you can see some of the milling marks on the billet, but it's still coated in that really beautiful blue color.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. I mean, I love the machined aluminum look. Like I almost had them clear coat Bear, like just not Bear the company, like Bear rotors, or Bear calipers, because it just looks so good. But I was afraid that it actually wouldn't show up enough. It wouldn't contrast enough against the rotor. So we went with this blue. And I mean,
speaking of clear coat, though,
I'm in love.
You decided to take like or go against a lot of people's advice or input rather, and did something a little crazy with that rear end that you built with Strange. And tell us about that, because I thought it came out really cool.
Thanks. I just trying to be a little bit unique, with what I do. Sometimes I have some unique ideas that I think are pretty neat, and for some reason, like going back to the metal fab and welding and stuff, like I love the look of raw welded metal. It looks pretty awesome to me, especially when it's a high quality product like what Strange provides. So like when I saw that housing, it's like, dude, there's no way I'm covering this thing up. So yeah, I decided I Scotch brighted it and then clear coated the entire thing just to protect it. But man, like I think it, like the pictures don't even really do it justice.
It came out really cool. Oh, hey, before I forget, what kind of gears are in that thing?
We decided to go with a 411 gear.
Nice.
Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah.
With that 6-speed, you'll be good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a Motive 411 gear, and with 500 horsepower or 450, whatever we end up with, I think it'll be plenty of gear. It'll make it a lot of fun to drive. It should have. I mean, it should keep it in the power band everywhere with the Tremec Magnum and the 6 gears. And
yeah, it'll work really well when you're towing your Mustang to the track too.
This truck, when I bought it, actually had a bumper with an integrated hitch that somebody had like old school built in and welded into the frame. I mean, like welded with a piece of like big old beam. So I cut that out, but I will have a tow hitch on this truck.
Yeah, hell yeah, dude.
I think it'll just be another one of those things that's just more my style. So,
dude, come on, how cool is that? Like, I love it when I see like an El Camino pull in a Chevelle on a trailer, or just like just any old truck pull in like a cool car.
The challenge is that I'm not going to be able to tow anything that heavy because we obviously designed the rear shock and spring package around what I'm going to be doing. So like, while I can go to Home Depot and probably load the bed up with a few hundred pounds, not a big deal, but I can't load the bed because I mean it just wouldn't take it. But I'm gonna use it. Like this thing's gonna go to Home Depot, wood in it, whatever. Like it's gonna be fun.
You could feasibly attach a little trailer back there and drive it on some drag and drive events.
No, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Exactly, like
or make a trailer out of the back of another F100.
Hey,
just saying.
Now you're thinking. I got a couple sitting back here by the shop.
Nice. Okay, so you got the drivetrain all figured out. You're making progress like gangbusters, dude. Like we're 9 months into this project. You mentioned that like you first started back in January. Obviously, the planning and prep started before then, but you really got into the build in January, and now we're in September. So 9 months. You've been knocking this thing out of the park, dude. What came next after that rear end and brake? The rear end and brakes.
So Silver Sport actually had the truck for about 2 months. So I started this build in March.
Excuse me.
But honestly, I think this truck is just it's really brought some sanity during this pretty crazy time with COVID and everything. So being that I work from home for Automedia out of Tennessee, like my escape is to the shop. When I'm not spending time with my wife and the dogs, I will run out there and spend some time out there. And it's been really good. It's been really good for just overall mental health and just like having a good time out there and jamming to music and just working on this thing. But what's next? The truck is a full roller. The suspension's on.
Now it's a full roller because you got some new shoes for that thing.
Yeah, so that's one of the most recent things. With the new axle, we changed the lug pattern. Actually, now the bolt pattern is a Mustang. It's a 5x4.5. So, I sourced some wheels from Rocket Racing wheels, and I had them for a few months, but I couldn't put them on because they're a Mustang bolt pattern. So now that I have the new front brakes installed with the new hubs, we also got the new rear end, and I could put the wheels on, and now it's truly a full roller. And basically, once I finished all that, I've been working on getting the gas tank mounted in. So that's the latest thing is I got the gas tank mounted in the back of the frame because traditionally they come behind the seat.
And that's a Holley deal, right?
Yeah. So the thing to do with these trucks is use a 70 model Mustang gas tank, and Holley makes a really nice drop-in EFI tank with a EFI module, a sending unit, and everything. So, yep, we called them up, got one of their sniper kits. Really affordable. You can put whatever pump you want on it. We went with like it's a Walbro 450 pump, so it'll move plenty of fuel for the Coyote. And yeah, we got a bunch of plumbing and regulator stuff that they had sent us. So that's really the next step is actually plumbing the fuel lines and then plumbing the brake lines. And because the brakes are just hung at this point. I need a Master Power Brakes is partnering with us to do the booster because we're going to do power brakes. And then
wait a second, hold on. Can I speculate on which booster is going in your truck?
No, it's not. I know where you're going. You're thinking carbon. That thing is wild. That thing is so cool. Very cool. I don't know why we didn't go that route. I think actually it wasn't ready by the time we were ready. So because I just saw that it was released, it is gorgeous.
So cool.
Yeah, the muscle car crowd is going to be happy because I mean I don't think it gets any better than that when it comes to a booster. It's so pretty.
Yeah, I'll drop a link in the comment section for you guys. But Master Power Brakes, they've been making brakes for classic muscle cars and trucks for a long time, but they recently innovated and dropped like these carbon fiber brake boosters that are not only like really trick looking, but they have some really cool performance implications. So I'll drop the link in the comment section.
Yeah, so I did get. I think it's like a late model Corvette booster or something along those lines, and I actually have that same technology in my booster, which is pretty awesome. So that is really, really neat. Like it is a brand new booster technology for them or for their product offering. But the neat thing about Master Power Brakes, I mean, those guys are for sure experts, and they also all their aftermarket calipers, if I'm not mistaken, actually come from Bear brakes. So Bear machines a lot of their calipers. So their 6-piston and 4-piston stuff that you see or buy in their kits, it's private label through Bear. Like all their stuff is top notch. And that's why I decided I wanted to go up with a booster kit from them because, I knew it was going to be bolted. It was going to be simple. And, Mark Chichester over there at Master Power Brakes, I mean, man, like you need anything, like the guy is, he'll take care of you with tech support or sales support, whatever you need. So
yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge, man. We've worked on a few pieces of editorial in the past, and every time I reach out to him for like technical information, I mean, he's spot on.
Well, and super important for me because like I ripped all the fuel line and the brake line out of this truck because I knew that I'd have to start from scratch. So this is the first time ever I'm flaring, bending, running fuel lines for myself outside of just bolting on a stainless line on a late model vehicle. So yeah, I mean, I need somebody like Rick at Bear and Mark at Master Power Brakes that can walk me through and say, hey, you want to run this kind of fitting here, you want to run this much hard line, that'll make sense. And hey, don't forget to do this here. So like they've made it pretty painless, which I say that now, and my next step next week is actually start running the line. So I'll let you know.
Yeah, but isn't that like therapeutic though? Like I like flaring lines and kind of routing them and making,
See, what I'm hearing from you guys is you aren't people who make the perfect flare and then look to the left and realize your flare nut's sitting on the bench.
Oh, I made that
the perfect flare, and I guarantee you will do that, Ivan. And when you do, you will say all the F words.
Yeah, I'll send you a text, Greg, with the F word.
Yeah. So when I get the random F word text, I'm going to be like, you just installed your first flare without the flare nut.
Yeah, exactly. But I am looking forward to it. It is therapeutic. I think it'll be a whole new skill that I can add to my toolbox, I guess. And I like doing things a certain way, so it'll be fun to route them and secure them in my own, in my own way.
Very cool, man. So now that you got that all sorted, I got a couple more questions as for the plans on the build. Have you thought about the interior, the dash, gauges, things like that?
Yes, I have. I've thought a lot about it. The interior will probably be the last thing that's touched for obvious reasons. Like, I can throw the bench seat back in this thing and just drive it. Because obviously this stuff doesn't come cheap. But TMI really makes a kick-ass interior for this thing. I won't change the door panels because I just love the painted factory metal door panels on these trucks. But they make a nice dash pad, which I'm also undecided about. I pulled the dash pad off, and the dash is in great shape. The paint's still there. But they make a nice seat, and they have a few different seat options because I really don't want to get away from the bench seat yet.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, because you're keeping the patina, you're keeping the door panels. You said that the dash might stay. So it might be a little bit odd if you just had buckets in there.
Right. So my plan is to do a roll bar, but I'm going to do the roll bar in the real estate that I've removed the gas tank in, so it really won't be noticeable. It'll be tucked and hidden. But I want to do a roll bar with a harness bar, and I'm probably just going to run a bench with 4-point harnesses or whatever. Not ideal. I know people are probably going to talk shit on that or whatever. But you know what? You're right. I want to keep the originality of the truck. Like I want to do modern things, but I don't want to take away from the character of that vehicle.
And the thing that, people who would criticize someone for keeping a bench seat in a pro touring car don't understand is that when you're talking about a company like TMI, they've been there and they've done it before, and they know like the detriments that you would run into running obviously a factory style bench seat that's, either covered in vinyl or whatever, because that's very flat and you're going to slide around. If you look at TMI's bench seat offerings, they have like a pseudo bucket integrated into. Exactly.
That thing is neat, man. And that's exactly what I think I'm going to go with. I think it's a good solution to give you a little bolstering. I mean, is it going to be ideal on the road course when I take this thing to a road course? No, but I think it'll be ideal for 90% of the time, which is, really what I'm after.
Exactly. And, when you think about it, how often are you going to be tracking this car versus how often are you going to be driving it on the street? So you have to weigh that style versus performance cost benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. And same thing goes with the gauges. I want to keep that classic styling. But this is probably one spot where I will be a little bit modern. Not like a showy, blingy modern, but I originally thought about the Dakota Digital route. But being that this is a manual car or truck, being that it's manually shifted, and I want to have a tack. And the Dakota Digital options, like the tack is kind of small, at least from what I've seen. I think if I don't go the Dakota Digital route, Holley makes a really nice set of gauges, and they also have a GPS speedo. They're black. They show really well at night, and they're really easy to wire up, but they go in like a factory style bezel. So I would paint the bezel in a way that matches the patina of the truck.
Yeah. Is that bezel, is that from Classic Dash?
No, it's from UC Speed. This guy makes like one-off fiberglass, and mostly he focuses in carbon fiber stuff. But they're a very small Texas company that just builds some really neat stuff.
Right on, man. Well, I don't think you can go wrong either way. I've had Dakota Digital stuff in like a couple of my cars, a couple of my Harleys have had Dakota Digital. They're fantastic units, but it's all, it's all tape.
I may go that route. They may have. I may look into it more when the time comes, and they may actually have. They probably have a customizable option that'll add in exactly what I want. That's the nice thing about them. They do build some really neat stuff.
Well, that's the fantastic thing about the aftermarket is that they listen to the consumers, right? So all these companies are offering things for people with different tastes. So I'm sure you'll be happy at the end of it. So that's what you have planned for the future. Is there anything else that you can think of about Project F-Word that you'd care to divulge at this time, Mr. Korda?
Not really. I think we about covered it. This truck's going to be pretty special to me. I think I've had all these wild ideas in my head for the last 2 years. And they're wild to me. They may not be wild to some other people, but finally kind of seeing them come to life is pretty awesome. And like, I have a hard time not going out there to the shop and like walking by this thing and smiling, especially like the rear view right now is just so wild because we're running like 18x10 in the front with a 275/30 Toyo. And then it's a 18x12 in the rear with a 305/35 Toyo. So like it's going to have an aggressive stance, but
very cool, man.
Really, really neat experiences so far with this thing.
So for all of our viewers, listeners, readers who want to know more about Project F-Word, you can find out more on FordMuscle.com and StreetMuscleMag.com. And Ivan, he's cranking out a great editorial with our editorial team. And so, yeah, keep your eyes open and check out Project F-Word. Ivan, I know that you have some travel planned here in the future that you wanted to talk about before we let you go. So tell us where you're going.
Yeah, a little strange.
We've been talking about all this Ford stuff.
Yeah, right. So I live in right outside of Memphis, Tennessee, which is about 3.5 hours from Bowling Green. So yeah, me and a buddy are going up this weekend to visit the Holly crew at LS Fest and see what that's all about. I've actually never been to the show, even though it's pretty close. But I guess for obvious reasons, it's an LS show, so not really like my first go-to. I see some really neat builds every year when we cover the show, and Brian comes back and he shows all these neat pictures. So I wanted to get out of town a little bit. So we're going to go this weekend, LS Fest, check out, the crazy racing, drifting, burnout competition, car show that they put on. And then next weekend is Mo Party. I'm going to go check that out as well, which is all Dodge. It's same concept, from Holly. And then, a few weeks from now, they actually have a Ford Fest, but I'm not going to be in town. So the only event I'm not going to is Ford.
Well, that's the kind of irony that that can only happen to you, Ivan. But but yeah, man, you are in for a treat. Greg, what do you think the chances are that Ivan comes home with an LS powered 240?
I'm going to say pretty high.
Hey, I will say, S14 with an LS, I almost built it. Blaine at Holly has a really neat little LS.
Yeah, don't call it a drift car.
Yeah.
Oh, he got so mad at me when I called it a drift car one time.
All 240s are drift cars.
Right.
But if you put an LS in a S14, I'm going to be mad. I would love to daily drive an unmolested S14. I don't think such a thing exists anymore. Ever since I was a little kid, I've wanted one of those, and they just don't exist. So do it to an S13 all day long.
Greg, what do you think about a M3, like mid-2000s M3 with a Coyote?
I think if you could get it to fit, you'd be a wizard. But if you could get it to fit, I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah, an E46.
I think it's maybe a 92. I'm not European versed, but I think it's a
92. You're talking about like the 335i or CI.
Yeah, that chassis. Yep.
Yeah, I think absolutely you would never get a Coyote to fit because those came with inline engines, and granted they were canted over a little bit, so they're a little bit wider. But there is no way you would ever fit a Coyote in one of those.
LS swap in a E36, and I mean it was ungodly to try to run the steering shaft in that thing, from what I remember. So,
well, like I said, you're going to have a blast out of LS Fest, dude, especially since you've never been. I've only been to LS Fest West, and it is insane, bro. It's like literally a party. So they aptly named their Mopar show Mo Party based on the LX platform, anything with a late model Hemi. And then I've never been to the Ford show from Holly. Have you?
No, I haven't. And They've partnered up with some really cool, like, let's call them influencers, right? Like, I know Cletus McFarland does a thing. Like, Vaughn Gittin Jr. comes out there, who's a Formula D driver. He's a professional drifter, and I believe there's one or two others that go out there. But yeah, it's a really unique show. I've been to it before it was Ford Fest, but like the last few years, apparently they've taken it to a whole another level. So man,
it's awesome. If you guys are in the area, definitely head down there and check it out. It's actually correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but it's much larger than LS Fest West because they're doing it at a much larger venue. Where is it taking place, Ivan?
It's at Beach Bend Raceway in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Of course, right. So it's going to be huge. If you're in the area, check it out. And then next weekend, Mo Party, if you're in the area and you're a Mopar fan, check that out too.
And if anybody wants to mail me some Smoky Pig, just send me a message and I will give you my address since I can't seem to get that over here in Arizona.
So Greg is referring to like a barbecue joint, I think, in the area.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure.
Greg, if I have an opportunity to end up outside the track to eat, I will figure it out for you, man.
Yeah, those guys. I mean, they're awesome people, and it's great food, and I mean, it's just I don't know.
I love barbecue. Love
Yeah.
barbecue.
There you have it, guys.
But you're Memphis, so I don't know. I don't know if they're that kind of barbecue. I don't know. That might be interesting to see what you think of them.
Yeah, I don't discriminate.
Ivan, before we let you go, dude, do you have any parting shots? Anybody you'd like to give a shout out to, or anything like that? I know you got to get back to work.
You know, I think just everybody that's really kind of stepped up and decided to partner with us on this project. I mean, some really, really kick-ass companies from Bear, Strange, Ford Performance, Silver Sport Transmissions, Master Power Brakes, like I mentioned, Holley. I mean, I've found so many new things on Holley's site that I had no idea that they even all my brake lines and stuff I buy through Holley. QA1, of course, for creating this bug, and Mr. Ed Zinke, that guy for sitting at SEMA with me and game planning this thing a little bit. So, Rocket Racing Wheels, kick-ass products, really nice stuff, and then Toyota tires as well. So everybody really that's kind of stepped up and helped out with this thing.
That's awesome, man. Like I said, everybody at home, check out streetmusclemag.com and fordmuscle.com for all the latest updates on Project F-Word. Ivan, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us, bro. It's always a pleasure. I'm always amped to go and work on my own projects after I talk to you. So thank you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Definitely, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
See you.
There you have it, Greg. Another great episode, number 30. We're 9 months into this thing. I've been having a blast with you, man. This has been so much fun. Dude, I've had a chance to talk with a bunch of people that I otherwise probably wouldn't have talked to or had these fantastic conversations/interviews.
Yep.
So I'm really grateful.
Yeah, it's just a cool outlet, man. I mean, it's just.
Yeah, it's rare, that you get a long form. And I've said this before, like how often in this day and age, COVID aside, right? Even before COVID, how often do you just get like an hour or two to just BS with somebody about a common interest, right? Uninterrupted, no, not looking at your phone, not, messing around with emails, just talking about something. And for me, I always get
to call it work.
Yeah, exactly. I take it as a learning experience because, that old cliche saying that you learn something from everyone, but it's true. And every time I talk to someone, I'm like a sponge. And so I'm grateful for Ivan coming on today because, like I said, dude, he always like has me amped to go work on my own projects and to get stories done, and not just because he's like a slave driver or nothing, but because it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah, and he said something when you guys were talking about getting the cab on. He said something like, finally. And I'm like, finally? What the hell? There's no finally with your project yet? Like, dude, I have food in my refrigerator that's been there longer than he's had this truck. Like, he works so fast.
I know. And then he's like quick to correct me. He's like, well, I've actually only been working on it since March.
I mean, he has a work ethic that is second to none. I mean,
yeah. How do you like that Ivan impression? I think it's pretty spot on.
Yeah.
He's gonna kill me the next time he sees me. But no, it was a fun interview. Like I said, everybody, if you want to check out what's going on Project F-Word, check out fordmuscle.com and streetmusclemag.com. It's on both. So whichever flavor you like. Greg, what's going on Engine Labs, bro?
Oh, well, we got whether you want to be lighthearted or whether you want to be serious, we've got some cool stuff this week.
Right on.
The serious stuff, we've got a build from Auto it's a 560-inch Olds. With that's actually also on Street Muscle. I mean, that is just so cool. I remember when I wrote the first article on that rocket racing block, I was like, this thing's amazing. It's so cool. And then to have someone like Bill Travato actually, do a build with it. Bill's an awesome dude. I've known him forever from the NMCA days. It's a really cool engine build. Like, if I were going to be like an old car guy, I think I would be an Olds guy. Just because old guys they're small numbers. They're, they're a little bit off, just like me, But anyway, so I like the old stuff. But so that's the serious one.
Yeah.
And then if you want the lighthearted stuff, it's actually a video you sent me, where the dude stuck a GoPro in an intake manifold.
Oh, cool! You did an article on it. Very cool.
Like that is just too cool. We've actually done some articles with him in the past. His name's Matt Mika. I hope I'm saying that right. But he's done all the see-through engines.
That was him. Okay.
That's him. Yeah. He's done the see-through rotary, which I think that's my favorite personally. He has that see-through Briggs and Stratton, and then the see-through Briggs and Stratton that he ran on like 90% nitro with a turbo. But yeah, so that's really cool. And then we do have another cool one with Billy Godbold on the LST camshaft development. And Billy Godbold is a nuclear engineer. Let's just put that out there. He is probably one of the smartest people I know, but he can speak hot rod. You know what I mean? Like, yes, he can speak and totally melt your brain, and it'll leak out your ears and whatever. But he can also speak hot rod and make you understand and that's what this video is. It's him sitting down and talking about their new low shock technology stuff, not like the first article we put out where it was like, super high level technical. It's a little more casual, I guess. So if you have any interest with that, that's up there too.
Definitely, dude. That's awesome. That's really cool. Let's see. Street Muscle. What do we got going on this week? Today. So it'll be live by tomorrow. Carbon Creations, GT500. So the guys from Speedcore, basically imagine a Speedcore GT500. Yeah. So there's all kinds of information going up on that one. I haven't published the article yet, but by the time this episode airs, it'll be up. And click on that streetmusclemag.com logo, and you'll know which article I'm talking about as soon as you see the photo.
I'm going to have to edit out some inappropriate noises I just made. Wow. I mean, I'm a sucker for carbon fiber. I mean, I know I'm a sucker for it. And then you add in GT500, and it's just...
Well, so you remember a couple weeks ago when we had Sean Smith from Sean Smith Designs, formerly Speedcore, formerly Celine, Ring Brothers, etc. And he talked about some of the design processes and when he was working with Speedcore. Well, from the makers of, right, they took a 60... I have to look back at my article. I'm working on it right now, so bear with me, guys. Yeah, 67 GT500, and basically made it out of carbon fiber. So there's going to be all kinds of specs. They're selling a very limited amount of them. I think like 25. Like I said, I got to go back and look at the information. I'm still going to publish this article, but that's going to be a really cool one. So go check that one out. And of course, we always have great stuff going up on streetmusclemag.com, enginelabs.com, all the websites under the Power Automedia banner. And so drop us a comment in the comment section. Let us know you're there. Let us know where you're from. Let us know what you want to see next, who we should have on our show, and just say hi. Other than that, we'll see you next week, noon Pacific time, as always. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you. Peace.